If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you're in the right place.
It's third down, Bryce Young's career. You need 10, play clock at 4. From the pocket, launching downfield, underthrown and intercepted. Keely Ringo has an escort down the sidelines. All the way to the end zone, and Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide.
Hosted by Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan Williams.
Georgia on the mountaintop. Demons be gone, and the drought is over. National champions at long last.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Classic City Sports. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard, along with my buddy Jonathan Williams. I've got a fun show for you tonight. You know, the coaches poll came out this week, so we're going to sit here and kind of go over that and look at where Georgia fell on there, who got some first place votes, and what that might look like as the season rolls through, and what we think, how it's going to hold, kind of thing. And then Glenn Schumann, he took to the podium, had a lot of stuff to say. If you're interested in seeing word for word on that, there's an article out on dogsdaily.com by Brooks Austin that'll give everything. But we're going to hit some key points of that part and all of his comments that we felt were noteworthy. They were more noteworthy than some of the other things. And then, as always, we're going to kick it out finish everything up with King of the Hill. Brought to you by Jonathan Williams, as per usual. Should be a pretty fun one. We're going to talk about one of Georgia's rivals out there and what we expect their win-loss record to look like this season, and kind of evaluate what we think is going to happen after that. But Jonathan, how are we doing this week, man? Heard you had a little bit of a rough day.
It was a rough day. It was a pretty rough day for your boy. Fingers getting smashed by hammers, getting caught up in a Yellow Jackets nest. You know, it was just one of those days for me. But, you know, that's all right. Working for me is about to be done with, about to move back to Athens. So that's okay. Make the money while you can. But other than that, I'm doing really good. Excited for this episode. I think there's a lot of good stuff to talk about, especially with the coaches poll. And honestly, I'll go ahead and start us off. The top 10, I really didn't have any discrepancies with. Top 10 to me looked pretty solid, especially top 4. I understand that it may be bit far-fetched to put Clemson at number 4 like they did, but also Clemson returns a good amount of players, and their defense is still going to be really good. They have a lot of key guys on that defense that are coming back, specifically at linebacker. They have some really good linebackers there. But other than that, top 10 to me looks solid. Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, Texas A&M, Utah, Oklahoma, and Baylor rounding it off. I don't have any issues with it, really. I think it is interesting that Utah is in the top 10. Seems like every single year there's one of those teams that kind of creeps up into the top 10 that's kind of not expected, like Iowa State last year. Iowa State was buzzing. There was college football playoff hype for Iowa State last season in the preseason, if you remember that.
Yeah, I can't.
Now, I'm a big Cameron.
It was everywhere.
It was. I'm a big Cameron Rising fan, which is Utah's quarterback. I like him a lot. I liked what I saw from him during bowl season last year. Really exciting to watch. And they open up with Florida in the swamp week 1. And spoiler alert, Florida, you're very much probably going to be walking into an L week 1. But other than that, top 10 looks pretty solid.
Yeah, I would agree. Overall, I don't have a problem with like the top 10. I do have a problem with Clemson sitting at 4 after coming off a 3-loss season. And what did they do to make that drastic of an improvement to give them the benefit of the doubt of being a top 4 team when you have other teams out there? You know, Michigan coming off of a playoff loss, Texas A&M who's out there making a lot of noise. Notre Dame, I would honestly probably rather see Notre Dame sitting at the coaches poll number 4 than Clemson, even though I can't stand Notre Dame like that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of weird to have Clemson top 4 after coming off of a 3-loss season, and they were in the Cheez-It Bowl last year, whatever it was. That's a little interesting. But yeah, I made the same note when I was looking at it. Utah being in there, I think that's going to be an interesting look this year. I think they are going to play that role of everyone talking about them potentially making a push for a a Final Four type appearance like they did with Iowa State last year. It should be an interesting development there. Oklahoma being at 9, I could have seen them being a little bit higher, quite frankly. I know they lost Caleb
Mhm.
Williams and they lost, Riley, but they love
They did get Dylan Gabriel, who
Yeah.
he played pretty decently at UCF, so it's by no means a horrible replacement. Obviously, he doesn't have the buzz that someone like Caleb Williams does around like Heisman Trophy, putting up video game numbers and stuff like that. But still, Dylan Gabriel is a pretty solid quarterback. I don't know that they finished in the top 10 because, again, like anytime you got a first-year head coach going into your program, you kind of got to pull back in the expectations, just kind of sit back, don't do anything, don't say anything, just kind of observe as to what he does. Because I'm interested to see what Venables is able to do out in Oklahoma. He made a pretty strong comment the other day talking about committing. If you commit to me, you don't go anywhere else. You stay committed to us. Perfect for a Dabo Sweeney disciple. But here's the thing, Stoddard. This is where everybody had the biggest issue with the coaches poll.
Go ahead.
So you heard me read off the top 10 names, and in the top 10, Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia all received first place votes. Alabama led the pack with 54, Georgia had 6, and Oklahoma State had 5. But then you go all the way
Ohio
down,
State.
ranked number 18, and Texas got a vote for first place. It was only one, but they did, and that's the only other team besides those 3 I named earlier that got a first place vote and was in the top 25. But they're ranked at 16th. But someone said that, by God,
I think they're ranked at 18th, actually.
the Longhorns better be number 1 on my poll. Thoughts on that?
Thoughts on that is the same kind of thought that I had when we saw the one first place vote for the SEC East going to Vanderbilt this year. That's the vibe it gave me.
Yeah,
Somebody just threw it out there. Somebody just threw it out there and goes, this will be funny.
Let me do my coach's poll real quick.
Let me sit back and just waste my first place vote and throw it to this team just because guess what? I know everyone's going to be talking about it. We're all going to talk about it. Like
that person's tactic had to have been my test taking skills for when it in high school was, if you don't know it, just Christmas tree it. When in doubt, Christmas tree it. So they just went down the teams and Christmas tree it, and Texas just happened to end up at the top for them. That has to be the only way that Texas received a first place vote. I mean, I get it. Looking at Texas roster, it's really, really solid. You got Bijan Robinson at running back, really, really good running back. I mean, Heisman potential, one of the best backs in the country by bar none. And then also you got Quinn Ewers at quarterback. Again, really good quarterback. Supposed to be a really good quarterback at least. Haven't really seen anything from him at the collegiate level. And then you got Xavier Worthy, our wide receiver, a really good wide receiver. He is could very well be the number 1 wide receiver in this class in the upcoming season. So you got a lot of offensive talent. That's Sarkisian's groove. That's what he knows in college. That's what he's always known. And him having an offensive coordinated background, all that stuff. The offense is going to be good. But the question is, I kind of see them how I've seen Oklahoma for like the past 10 years, I feel like. Yeah, their offense is probably going to be really good, but what's that defense looking like? How are they going to get stops? Because I don't care how you get stopped, how good your offense is, Tennessee, by the way. I don't care how many points you put up. If you're giving up points all over the place and you can't get stops, it ain't going to matter. You ain't going to win as many games as you think you do. So that's kind of how I feel about Texas. I get the hype. I understand. Offense is exciting. That's what people want to see. That's what gets people's attention. But at the same time, it's a holistic view for me. What does your team look like in totality? And for me, Texas does not pass the test in that regards for me.
No, I don't think they do either. And they do have a pretty favorable, conference at that point, right? Especially with Oklahoma being down right now, because like we said, yeah, they may be in the top 10, but do you expect it to hold in top 10 territory throughout the season? Quite frankly, I don't, because like you said, you listed all the reasons. I won't go back over the same thing, but as a first-year head coach, it's a new system. It's all this stuff. You're coming from a guy that ran a defense, a good defense, a darn good defense at Clemson. That's great. It takes a little bit for a guy like that to come in and produce offensively and make something out of it, which is what we saw. Let's take it back to Kirby days real quick, right? It took Kirby's offense a little bit of time to get up. It took him finding the right guy as an offensive coordinator to really work well with him, somebody he trusted. There's not a bunch of Todd Munkins out there that are as good at the job, and somebody that Kirby would be willing to let have that much control. Think about how things were with like James Coley. He only was in there for a year, and Kirby said, nope, gotta go. This ain't working. It takes a little bit. So I think it's going to take Venables a little bit of time to actually find a offensive coordinator that he trusts working with to be able to succeed and be a top 10 team again. With that being said, that just tells me, though, that Texas has the opportunity to dethrone them in the Big 12, and it does make it favorable for them to make some runs. I expect them to finish, higher than 18th, which is where they're starting right now. But the big thing for them with me is exactly what you said, too. Quinn Ewers hasn't played a snap of football in college yet, outside of practices. He jumped from Ohio. He skipped his senior season in high school, jumped straight into college football at Ohio State, and made it through the season and instantly transferred in January or whenever it was. Like he was transferred basically as soon as you could transfer out of there. I'm pretty sure. If somebody wants to fact check and see when he actually transferred, that'd be great. But he hasn't played anything. So now all of a sudden, I get frustrated with all of the hype that everyone puts on a team like Texas when they have a quarterback that they're going off of. Basically, he's a true freshman in my head, man. Like he essentially would be a true freshman right now, actually. He would be. He spent a year in a college system, but he would be a true freshman right now because he skipped a year of high school to get there. How are we going to put a kid that's 18 years old on like that high of a pedestal going into a season where you have no proof of product? It's not there yet. I'm not saying he's not gonna be good. He might be great. We haven't seen anything. And the coaches poll and everyone voting on it haven't seen anything to really be able to say that that's justified. But yeah, let's throw him a first place vote. That's fun.
Well, speaking of throwing in votes, other teams that did make it not mentioned, we'll give some shout outs. Shout out to Oregon. They're number 12. Shout out to Dan Lanning out there in Oregon now. And then also Mel Tucker. His team's ranked number 14th going into the upcoming season. But again, Georgia is sitting at number 3 in the coaches poll prior to the 2022 season, which is ramping up. And clearly there's signs of it because Glenn Schumann, first press conference with the University of Georgia since taking over officially as defensive coordinator. I know that he was co-defensive coordinator in years past with Dan Lanning, but now Dan Lanning, like I said earlier, off to Oregon. Now it's Glenn Schumann. When you look at the defense, you're looking at Glenn Schumann, maybe a little bit of Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart, but the head man is Glenn Schumann as far as I know. And he, like you said earlier, he just gave a lot in his opening press conference, touched on a lot of things, spoke about a lot of players, updated us on a lot of things. And the first one I'm going to start off with, and it's my guy. I was talking to you, Dan, and Harrison. We were just talking defense like we typically do, talking some Georgia football. And I said, I'm really excited to see Jamon Dumas Johnson. You've heard his name kind of floating around now for a while. Also known as Pop. Love that. I mean, can't get any better for a linebacker. And so Glenn Schumann I keep wanting to say Dan Lanning. I really got to break that habit. Glenn Schumann. That's going
to take a little bit of time. Yeah, that's going to take a little bit of time to get used to.
So he talked about Jamon Dumas Johnson, how he's been doing in camp, his performance so far. And he just went out and said he loves football. He practices really hard. He's an instinctive physical player, but we need to continue to see him grow. Everybody needs to grow. It's day 6 of practice, but I've seen him try to step up and actually challenge. At this point, we all know how things go with Georgia and defense, especially with Kirby Smart as head coach. The older guys are going to get the reps more times than not, especially guys that stick around and wait their turn at the position. Ryan Davis and Trezor Marshall have done that at linebacker. So they're probably going to be the guys that you see open it up for Georgia at linebacker. But you also got guys like Xavier Sori, Jamon Dumas Johnson, that are floating around, Samael Mondon also floating around, that are really good. And you hear it from Glenn Schumann right there that those guys are continuing to improve. They're continuing to grow, which is what you want to see from a guy like JDJ, who's starting to enter that middle part of his career. He's had 2 off seasons now pretty much under his belt where he's gotten reps. He's getting accumulated to things. He's understanding what is expected of him as a linebacker. And again, it's Glenn Schumann with a linebacker. We know the drill. You play for Schumann, you play on Sundays. That's what Brooks always says, and that's the god dang truth. And that's what it's looking like for the
Facts.
upcoming linebackers right now. And Jamon Dumas Johnson is one I'm really excited to see this season. And I think he's going to be a guy that you may not see a bunch of at the start, but come midseason and towards the end of the season, his name and his number are going to be a familiar sight on the football field.
That's true. And, and you kind of gave me a perfect segue point when you said something about, being there, waiting your turn and being ready to put in the work and go for it. Well, the next thing that I wanted to point out from his comments was about Nolan Smith returning for his senior season and how big that is for this roster, right? Well, first of all, it's huge. When you get a guy like that to return for their senior season, that's as hungry as he is, because this is his money year, right? Everyone knows it's his money year. You got to go out there, ball out, and you're going to be able to take that jump to the next level. This year determines your future entirely. Well, he's also that leader, right? You needed somebody to take over as a leader out there. And the comment that stuck out to me from Schumann on him was Nolan is one of those guys that, hey, if you're going to talk about it, you got to be about it. So he's out there. He holds himself to an extremely high standard, but he's also holding everybody else to a high standard. He's going to make them. You can't just be walking around saying, I'm great, I'm good because of this, that, and the other. Show me that you're great. Show me why you are great. Show everybody why you are great. And so I'm excited to see what he's going to do, because I know he's got that voice. He's a very vocal player based on what Schumann is saying, plus what we've seen and, been able to evaluate ourselves. He's going to take charge of it. And you needed him on this roster this year, because at that linebacking core, that's usually where your leader of the defense is going to come from, because they're the ones. Think about the leaders in the past. Who's it been, right? You had N'Kobe Dean, you had Monty Rice, you had Roquan Smith. Those guys were all like the captain of the defense. They were running the defense, and it's that linebacker position, right? They played a different spot than Nolan did, sure, but they're still a linebacker. That linebacking core is extremely young or extremely inexperienced. They got a ton of talent, just really inexperienced at those positions. So you really needed Nolan Smith to come back and take charge, and it looks like he is.
Yeah, Nolan Smith, I think, in my opinion, the thing in years past, it seems like teams that go and make a national title run and teams that ultimately win a national title, you got to have a good mix of young talent that's on the verge of just popping off and stapling their name into the college football world and putting everybody on notice. But you also got to have some guys that we know who they are. We know what kind of player Nolan Smith is. We know what kind of player Jordan Davis is last year. We know who those guys are. But yeah, they're coming back for another season. And it's not just their ability on the field, it's their leadership as well. Jordan Davis was a big leader. While N'Kobe Dean was, you're right, he was the focal point of Georgia's defense. You saw it on the field, you saw it off the field, or at least you heard about it off the field. You knew who the leader of that pack was. And this year, it sounds like Nolan Smith is kind of taking on that role. And that's a good thing to see as someone that, and you're hearing the same things that you heard last year about he's holding people accountable. That defense last year held each other accountable. Yes, they were a unit and they were together and they loved each other. But you saw it from N'Kobe Dean last year when he held Channing Tindall accountable in the biggest game of the season. Still one of my favorite highlights
from that game. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody knows the play where he's screaming in Channing Tindall's face saying, you have to be there on that play. Very next play, boom, sacks Bryce Young on the very next play, force him to kick a field goal. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of things you need on a defense.
Yeah.
Those things
saved 6 points.
Yeah. And having leaders like Nolan Smith, having leaders like Nolan Smith is a big difference maker. And especially considering you lost Travon Walker in the offseason. And if you threw in Nolan Smith as well, that's not only two defensive tackles that you were going to be replacing in Devontae Smith and Jordan Davis, or not Devontae Smith, Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis. Yeah. But then you would also had to replace Travon Walker and Nolan Smith off the edge. That's a lot for a defense to take on in one offseason. So it's a good thing to have him back locking down the edge. And he's a guy that's continued to improve. So so his final year at Georgia should be looking pretty good as well. And a lot of expectations for him as well. Another guy that's got some high expectations for me. Really liked what I saw from this guy at G-Day. I wrote a good, bad, the ugly article for G-Day, and one of the uglies was that there was no pass rush, and I didn't really see much that flashed on the defensive line, but there was one player who really did flash for me, and that was Tyrone Ingram Dawkins. That guy flashed. He was coming off the edge. I really liked what I saw from him. He was consistently getting to the quarterback for the spring game. And Glenn Schumann touched on him, gave a little update on what's going on with him in camp right now. And he said, I think the biggest thing is when he went into the spring, he really attacked his body and his ability to be a guy around the edge. That's a battle you take as a big guy every single day, all throughout the summer and into fall camp. The biggest thing is when you're leaner, you can be quicker and more explosive. It's beneficial. All things you really like to hear about a guy coming off the edge. We just talked about Travon Walker. He's gone number 1 pick in the draft, already tearing it up in the NFL. And now you got Tyrone, Ingram, Dawkins, who has a lot of upside, who flashed in the spring game, looking really good. Glenn Schumann gave a lot of positives about him into fall camp. Potentially a guy you see start to lock down that edge spot for Georgia, somewhere where they need it. You're going to need help up front on the defensive line. You ain't got Jordan Davis, who did a lot of special things for you defensively and just create a lot of attention. Jalen Carter does that too. Don't get me wrong, but you lost a lot up there. So you're going to need guys to step up and make some plays. Guys like Zion Logue and Tyrone Ingram Dawkins. But so really good to see him flashing in fall camp. Someone that will create a lot of attention from fans, I have a feeling, in the upcoming season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to put this up because shout out to Dan being in the comments. We appreciate you watching and supporting the show as always. But there are so many names. There's so many new names on that defensive side of the ball. Offensive side of the ball, we know who they are. There's not going to be any surprises there. Quite frankly, there might be 1 or 2 guys that are freshmen that you see, flash, but there's not a lot of guys to learn names of. Now, there are a lot of guys to learn names for on the defensive side of the ball. For if you don't pay attention to all of the recruiting and all of the offseason stuff like we do and like other people do in this channel, then you're gonna be out there going, who is that guy? Never heard his name before. But you're gonna be put on notice very quickly by guys like TID and JDJ, all these guys that we've been talking about. Those guys are going to show you who they are. You're not going to forget their name after the first couple of games. You see how much they pop off the screen, right? How many plays they're making.
Isn't that always kind of funny how, like, this year's recruiting class, you can pretty much remember all the names or majority of the names that came into this class, but it takes 1 year and you're like, holy crap, I totally forgot about Ingram Dawkins. I totally forgot about Jamon Dumas Johnson. Nyland Green, didn't even remember he was around. Now all these names are surfacing up. They're coming out of the waters. Now that there's spots available and these position battles are going on and people are fighting hard for their minutes, and you're like, holy cow, I totally forgot about them. And it just brings a lot of excitement, especially during this time of the year, because you're hearing about names. You're hearing that this person's doing really good in practice. This person's starting to flash. This person's starting to figure it out. That's really exciting. And it's always there's nothing better than college football just being right around the corner. The excitement builds up every single day because, like us, we're tweeting off all these, the countdowns of 23 days left or 24 days left. And it's like every single day, it's that much closer. We're that much closer to Georgia football being back. We're that much closer to college football being back. And it's just such a refreshing feeling seeing football flooding the timeline again and us finally actually getting to talk about relevant Georgia football things right now. It's not just us sitting here on a podcast being like, oh, well, I think in 5 months that Eric Gilbert is going to have 900 yards this year. These things are starting to come to fruition through the things that we
3
hear.
weeks, my guy. 3 weeks.
3 weeks. And then when you get just people bringing in intel like Brooks, that just brings so much excitement. I love this time of year.
Yeah, it's no longer we're on the tail end of talking season. I'm going to say it's still talking season because we still have a couple more weeks till the pads start popping and you start playing other people. So it's still time. Right now, everyone's got the same record. It's 0-0. Everyone is as good as everyone kind of thing right now. You can say you're better, but until you start seeing those pads pop on the field and all the scoreboards light up at the end of the game, then you don't know. You don't know how good your team is yet. You can't really say. And I was talking to a buddy about, before we get into the rest of the show, I was talking to a buddy about something earlier. Just like, man, it's easy for me to sit here and go, yeah, Georgia's good because of X, Y, and Z. I've been following them this offseason. I know the additions they've made. I know all of the changes, all the guys out there. And I know who's going to take over for the guys that left. So I'm confident that Georgia's still going to have a good defense, right? We know that because we follow it. From an outside perspective, they're like, say, teams that we play against, right? Let's use South Carolina, maybe Kentucky, like those teams as an example, or Tennessee, those 3 teams. They're going, man, Kentucky's has been right there, second place in the East for a while. Tennessee, blew up on offense last year, expecting them to do the same kind of thing. And then you've got, South Carolina making huge additions in the transfer portal with, all these players, right? They're going, Georgia's defense might not be so good this year, man. I don't know. It's hard to evaluate that because outside of the big names that transfer, like all of the big names, you're going, I don't know what that team has done to make their team better, or like they're going, I don't know what Georgia has done to answer those questions at defense this year. So in my head, they're not going to have the great defense that we're used to seeing. They're not going to have that elite defense that we have. When in reality, they're dead wrong because Georgia's going to have those guys. They may not be as good because obviously there's going to be a fall off when you have that many guys go in the first round and in the draft entirely. You're going to have to rebuild a little bit there. But there's guys there ready to take over that other people aren't going to notice. So when we sit here and talk about other teams in talking season, when we haven't seen them play a game yet, it's really hard to evaluate. That's coming to an end, and that's the most exciting thing ever. After week 1, we can sit here and go, man, now we know what that team looks like.
Talking season's done. There's no more of it. What you are is what you are. When the ball is kicked off for the first time, it's game on. From that point on, you are evaluated based on who you are in those games. What have you done in those games? There's no more of this speculation of if, when, how, possibly, unless you're Alabama and you do it all the freaking time, no matter what. But there's no more of this. The excuses are done. Talking season is done. It's just game on. Put some helmet to helmet. It's time to figure out who's the better team and what's really going on and who's the better team this year. And I think it's easy for people from an outsider's perspective to say, oh, well, Georgia's going to be down on defense. Yeah, because you look at the numbers, everything tells you that Georgia is going to be down on defense. If you look at it through that way, defensive production, huge tick down, not a lot of it returning. A bunch of guys entered the league. How are you going to possibly replace all those players that went into the draft? How is that even possible? But here's an interesting stat for you. I believe going into the 2021 season, Georgia was returning less defensive production last year than they are this year.
Preach.
Just saying. I mean, if we're going on, if you're just looking, and so that just tells you the whole story. Those things don't tell you the whole story. You can't base those things off of how a team is going to fare because you don't know what guy's going to click. You don't know what guy's going to step up and just absolutely flash out of nowhere. You don't know when you're going to get a guy like Dan Jackson, someone who nobody has heard of, all of a sudden just start playing meaningful minutes and is actually pretty dang good. Or have a guy like Keely Ringo, who is young and you probably wouldn't expect to be really good, but ends up balling out and is now your team's number one cornerback and is getting first round buzz going into this year already. Those, like, you can't predict those things. And that's why talking season, it's just talking. People are just talking, I guess, because they miss college football. But at the end of the day, it's meaningless, and it doesn't mean anything until helmet meets helmet on the football field.
No, it doesn't. And as the title of this goes, how good will Georgia's defense be in 2022? They will be as good as they are used to being. They may not be as elite as they were last year because they have a little bit of stuff to adjust to, but they will be a good defense, a great defense after, the season's all said and done. Don't think that Kirby Smart's going to come out here and just let that defense slack off because they lost some production. Like, as if that's going to matter to him. Like the stat that J. Will just dropped for you. They lost production before. They have more production coming back this year than they did last year. And last year's defense was literally the best defense we've probably ever seen in college football. You have guys, what you don't pay attention to, right? You looked at all the other stuff and all of the big names that left, like your Jordan Davises, your Nakobe Deans, all that kind of stuff, right? They all left. Things you should pay attention to that came back. Think about players like Robert Beal. Or Bobby Beal, as your boy Staquavius said in his presser. Stetson brought that up because I thought that was pretty funny. So I'm going to call him Bobby from here on out because I thought that was good. But he led the team.
Bobby Boucher Beal. That's the new nickname.
Yep. Bobby Boucher Beal. That's it. BBB. He's back this year. He led the team in sacks last year. So he played a special role. Yeah, he wasn't out there all the time, but he came in and he made his presence known when he was out there. Guys like that are coming back. When you bring him back and he was your leading sack guy last year, that's huge for your defense. That you have an experienced pass rusher out there. You have Nolan Smith on the other side that we talked about earlier. That guy's going to be working on his pass rush a lot this year as well, I feel. So you're going to have that. They're going to be in the backfield making plays, creating chaos, as Kirby likes to, point out that's what they try to do a lot. That's what you need. They're there still. So this defense is still going to be incredible.
And you have to remember, Robert Beal really didn't start playing a whole lot until the whole fiasco with Adam Anderson happened. And that was about halfway through the season. So for him to lead the team in sacks with the amount of talent that they had on it last year, and the fact that he really wasn't playing, he wasn't like an every down player essentially until halfway through the year, tells you everything to know what Bobby is capable of this for Georgia this year. And then also you have to know is that Kirby Smart is on record of saying this is his best coaching staff ever. And that includes him losing his defensive coordinator this year, a really good defensive coordinator. You got names like Will Muschamp, Glenn Schumann, who we already talked about, and Kirby Smart coaching up that defense. Those are three really good names, and they're proven developers at a lot of positions. So the defense is always going to be in good hands. And the thing is, when you do produce as much as Georgia does, when you do produce as much talent defensively that Georgia has over the years, you got to get used to replenishing it at a higher rate, and you got to get used to just it's go, 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 go. There's no missing a beat or there's no off year with your defense. There's a reason why Georgia has had a top 5 defense, I believe, in 3 of Kirby Smart's 6 seasons at Georgia. There's a reason for that, guys. It's no fluke, that's for sure.
It's no fluke at all.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. But someone who might be or it's not even a fluke season. We're going into King of the Hill. We're jumping straight into it. You guys know the drill by now. You know what King of the Hill is. Heck, we've been doing it all offseason. So we'll see if it gets to continue during the season. I don't know if it does, but we'll see. So, but anyway,
there's a lot to cover during the season, but it's a great topic for the offseason. It'll be around. It'll be around.
It's a staple at this point.
Yeah, it'll be around.
It is a staple. But today's King of the Hill, I really don't even know if I would classify it as a debate. It's more so just a discussion between us. And also, because I got stung by Yellow Jackets today, I'm feeling a little salty towards them. So we're going to be doing some Georgia Tech bashing today. And I was looking at their schedule. I sent it to you, Dan, and Harrison one time. And I said, can we talk about Georgia Tech's schedule for a minute? And I was just going up and down looking at it, kind of scoping out the talent. And I'm just going to read them off real quick. So just try and keep up with me if you can. You open up with Clemson, Western Carolina Catamounts, Ole Miss Rebels, UCF, Pittsburgh, Duke, Virginia, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami, North Carolina, Georgia. That is a loaded schedule. And I said it to you in the pre-show, and I don't care what anybody says. I can only guarantee Georgia Tech one win on that schedule, and it's to Western Carolina. There's only one win on that schedule that I can guarantee Georgia Tech has by the end of the year. The other ones either ain't happening, long shot, like games like Clemson and Georgia, or there are other games like Florida State who they just have better players, so they're probably going to win. And then you have like Duke and UCF, who's like, maybe that's a toss-up. But then again, I'm still probably giving the edge to Duke and UCF in that scenario. Because you got to remember, UCF got John Rice Plumlee and Gus Malzahn down there. And Gus Malzahn loves him a little mobile quarterback who's an athlete. And that's exactly what John Rice Plumlee is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I was looking at it, and I was a little bit more generous with them than you were, because I know you were like, bro, I see one win, and that's all I can say. And I mean, I get why you're saying that, because I looked at the same schedule, and I understand where you're coming from. I gave them that game, and then I gave them Duke, and then I'm saying that they catch one other team, so I'm giving them 3 wins because I do think they can beat Duke. I don't quite think they can beat UCF because like what you just talked about. And I don't know, man. I think they might be able to catch Florida State because Florida State just really hasn't improved.
That game's in Tallahassee, though.
I know it is.
I don't know, man.
I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm not saying that's the third team they beat. I'm saying that I think they could catch a third team, whether it be them, maybe it's UCF, maybe they go out and take care of. They beat Sam Howell last year with North Carolina. Yeah, they were in Atlanta and they were in the Georgia Dome.
Fair.
But they did beat Sam Howell and North Carolina. And now North Carolina doesn't have Sam Howell. They do have to travel to Chapel Hill, though, so that makes a big difference for me as well. So I don't know that they win, but I could see them winning 3 games. But to me, it's anything above that, I think is going to be an impossible hill to climb up. And at that point, this is what I talked to you about before the show as well, was man, if they don't, this is Jeff Collins' 4th season. If they win 3 games this year, after only winning 9 games in his first 3 seasons, like you said too, they can't even do a top 10 wins of Jeff Collins' career.
Jeff Collins cannot do a top 10 wins list because he doesn't have 10. He only has 9
at Georgia Tech. 9. So he can't even do that yet. So when you have a coach that's done that, and then you're going into his 4th year, and if he only wins 3 games, or maybe it's worse, maybe he only wins that 1 or 2 that we've been talking about, it's time to let him go.
At least
right?
he's
like,
consistent.
It's got to be time to go. Like at that point,
it'd have to
just
be.
fold the whole. If you're going to keep him, just fold the program. At this point, don't even.
It's over. There are 3 about to be 4 years deep in the Jeff Collins trial run. And there are no signs of improvement. You just lost your best player on the whole team. Jahmyr Gibbs gone, went to Alabama.
Yeah, that one hurts.
Who else you got on the roster? Jeff Sims. Every offseason, I feel like everybody's like, oh, Jeff Sims looking real good. He's got a real strong arm.
You don't even hear that
Nothing.
This year, you don't hear it.
Yeah, because you want to know why? People are catching on. People know it. Georgia Tech, it ain't it right now, man. You guys are not on the uphill climb. You guys are just kind of in a middle road of not even mediocrity, just a middle road of trash. That's where you're stuck at right now.
You know where they're slipping?
Where?
They're slipping to Vanderbilt territory.
Oh, Vandy territory. Well, I guess then that means that they'll be one of the best programs in college football in the near future.
That first place East vote.
By that logic.
That first place East vote, they're coming back. No, but that's for real. I'm being serious. Especially if they keep Jeff Collins around, what makes them think that if he has a 2 to 3 win season this year and they keep him around, are you just signing up to be at the bottom of even the ACC? You're the bottom of the ACC every year, and that's cool with you? Like, I don't understand. Like, at that point, that's why at least Vanderbilt's changing coaches more and trying to do something different, and like, it's not working, but they're trying something. I don't know.
All I'm going to say is if Georgia Tech is winning 3 games, they better get 2 of them in the first half of the season, because I'm telling you, those last 6 games, you got Virginia, Bobby Dodd Stadium, at Florida State, at Virginia Tech, Miami at home, at North Carolina, at Georgia. That is brutal way in the season. You got 4 of the 6 or 5 of the 6, 4 of the 6. 4 of the 6 final games are away. I mean, you only got 2 home games in that part of the season, and a lot of those teams are pretty good. They're pretty good teams. They're very well respected in college football. So, man, it ain't looking good already for Georgia Tech. I know we just talked about how preseason talk is just talk. It doesn't mean anything. But I don't think this one is just talk. I think this is absolutely true that Georgia Tech is in for another horrible season, which Georgia fans obviously don't care. They don't feel bad, but they do care a little bit, as we said earlier in the show, or not earlier in the show, before we got on the show. That part of Georgia fans probably want Georgia Tech to be at least decent. They want them to be at least a decent football team because rivalries are supposed to be fun. But they get too fun when when one of your bigger rivals is just dog water every single year, it seems like, and it's pretty much just another FCS matchup to end the season every single year.
So let me phrase it to you this way, because we have a couple minutes, we can still talk here. You have a team like Vanderbilt. Quite frankly, as a Georgia fan, Vandy week is a bye week for me. You know, I watch every game, I do, but that noon kickoff every time you play them, that
at least you go to Nashville win every other year, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe it'd be more fun to but it's not that fun to watch. You know, it's not a good game. You don't get antsy. You don't have that butterfly feeling as a college football fan is a fun experience, right? Like that, hey, this is going to be a good game. You know, expecting the other team to at least put up a fight. They're not even doing anything, right? Vanderbilt never challenges you at all. Georgia Tech, like I said, has entered that same type of territory. If Georgia Tech stays the same way, right? The same way that they are right now, maybe they win 2-3 games this year. And then the conference realignment happens in the SEC, right? And then you have to add an SEC game to your schedule or something like that. Maybe you eliminate some of your out-of-conference games. Do you really want to keep that game that you only have 3 out-of-conference games all of a sudden? Do you really want to give that to Georgia Tech every year versus being able to go out and schedule a Clemson or somebody that's a fun game? Like, we started the season off this year. I was so excited for the season to start last year, where you played this season you play Oregon to start the year. You might have
number 12 right now. It's a ranked matchup.
You might have to sacrifice a game like that to keep them on your schedule. So yeah, as a Georgia fan, I know it's weird, but I want Georgia Tech to at least be bowl eligible, like that. At least be up something that's like a team that could maybe try to punch you in the mouth one day. You don't expect that at all. You're what you know. It's a noon kickoff. It's coming. It's going to be a noon kickoff. You know it's going to be a bloodbath. It's in Athens this year too. Like it's not that fun to watch anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know Kirby Smart is not afraid to probably drop the hammer with scheduling. He's always, I mean, the foreseeable future for Georgia's schedule is littered with out-of-conference games, or what would have been out-of-conference games between like Oklahoma and Texas. But you got games against UCLA also in the mix out there. More games against Clemson. I think Oregon is in there again, possibly. Can't remember. Don't quote me on that. So I would not be surprised if eventually Kirby Smart just says, hey, yo, Josh Brooks, like, this ain't cutting it anymore, man. Like, we got to amp up the strength of schedule. We got to get a better game that we can have at home. We have to have better home games, or we just have to have better games on the schedule in general, because Georgia Tech ain't cutting it, man. We just got to leave them behind and leave them be left for dead is essentially how it would be for that. But yeah. I think that is going to conclude this week's show. And let's start. You got something else you want to add? You got some more Georgia Tech slander you're holding back that you want to get off your chest real quick?
No, I mean, not really on there, but you made a very good point with it, right? That's every other year, that's one of the 6 home games that you get in Athens, or maybe 5 home games that you get in Athens, depending on, with the Georgia-Florida game, right? That being a neutral site game, it counts as a home game, but it's not in Sanford Stadium. So you might only get 5 home games or something like that. Do you really want one of them to be Georgia Tech?
Not right now.
As a booster of the program, as somebody that goes to the home games and goes to all that, do you really want one of those 5 games to be Georgia Tech every single time? Like that's where you're going to start seeing those guys. Everyone complains about the home game schedule as is. One of those games this year that people are complaining about is Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got one good home game this year. It's Auburn. That's really your only good home game that you have right now. And last year was a snooze fest as well for home games. Your best one was a noon matchup against Arkansas.
Were we on the road against Kentucky? Yeah, we were on the road against Kentucky this year. Yeah. I was trying to remember if that game.
Home schedule is not looking too hot this year either. So things are probably going to change if that continues. Tennessee is at home. That's a good point.
That might be
so you got Auburn and Tennessee. We'll have to wait and see. When the season rolls around how they're looking. But that is going to conclude this week's episode. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. A lot of fun stuff. Talked about a lot of different things between coaches' poll rankings and our discrepancies with that, as well as Glenn Schumann, his first press conference as Georgia's defensive coordinator, what he said about players, things we're excited about, guys like Nolan Smith, Tyrone, Ingram, Dawkins. And then we close it out with King of the Hill with Georgia Tech. Their schedule not looking too hot. Their season not looking too hot either. So that is going to do it for us. Make sure to follow us on the socials. You guys know the drill. Dr._J. the Stodfather on Twitter, and then Classic City POD as well. Also on Facebook if you're interested in that type of thing. And Stoddard, you can close us out.
And as always, guys, keep it classy in the Classic City. We will catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Classic City Sports. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Classic City Sports Crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at the Stodfather, to Jonathan at Dr._J. and make sure to follow at Classic City Pod for show updates. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime,
to express the sentiments of the entire Bulldog Nation.